I met him at this hotel, and he said, he wanted to talk to me that uh, he had the divorce papers that he wanted to show me, which he did not. There was a knock at the door, and it was her, Darla, and she was banging on the door, and I couldn't believe it. I said, "Let me talk to her," and he said, "No, no," and then he ended up calling management to come up and have her removed from the property because she was freaking out, beating on the door. I said, "I wanna get out of here." He wouldn't let me leave. He trapped me in there again. It I finally said, "I'm gonna go and I'll come back." And when I left, uh, I sent her a message on Facebook and said, it's, of course you can see that it's me. And I said, "I have to talk to you. You don't understand what has happened. I need you to talk to me." And she said, "Absolutely." She called me and we spoke for several hours, and we just started cross-referencing. She went and got her little, calendar book or whatever, and every time he was with me, he would tell her he was out of town. Every time he was with her, he would tell me he was out of town for work. So we began to really cross reference where she was, where I was. And then, uh, you know, it all came out. It all came out. I I went back to that hotel and sat in the parking lot contemplating what can I do if this is just, how can he get away with this? How is this man able to continue to live this life and torment these women? And here he comes with another woman number who knows what. We'll say woman 3 because we don't know how many women are out there. Here he walks out with another woman, hand in hand, arm in arm. Clearly they're together. I couldn't believe it. I could not believe it. Another victim was with him, another woman. So he was just stringing several people along, and just had, how many are out there, we'll never probably know.
I'm Donna Anderson, and this is True Love Fraud Stories. There are people in positions of power and respect who are morally corrupt and evil. The woman you will hear from today, Sarah, will tell you about such a person, whom we will call Tim. All names are changed. Tim was high up in the military, almost as high as you can get. This was true. On this podcast, we've told stories of guys who conned women by outrageously exaggerating their military service. But Tim was the real deal. Well, maybe he was respected in military circles, but in his personal life, Tim was evil. Sarah didn't know that early on. When she started dating Tim, she thought she had finally broken her pattern of toxic relationships that started in childhood.
I have a sibling who is on the sex offender list to this day. He is a child molester, and I was abused by him. I was abused by another family member at a very young age. I would say the age of 9. And my father was an alcoholic who was very abusive to my mother. I believe he was a sociopath. He abused her physically and mentally. She was very codependent on my father. And I grew up in 2 different worlds. She would take us to church every Sunday morning, Sunday night, Wednesday night, put me into a Christian school, And then I would listen to that all day, and it was almost cultish. It was abusive at the church setting as well. I had some sexual abuse that happened within the church while I was at summer camp and things. And then I would come home to more abuse, which was my father abusing my mother. He just had a very violent temper. He could also have, she called him Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. So he had two different sides. So I never really experienced healthy from the school side, where you look at education and educational settings. Some kids go to school to feel safer. So I was getting abuse from all different sides of the spectrum.
Sarah went to college, and there she met the man who became her husband. That relationship was also unhealthy.
He was just a pathological liar. He didn't walk around and walk around and abuse me physically or anything, but he lied about everything, financial things.
Sarah was married for 17 years and had 2 children. It took her a long time to see that she was in an abusive relationship. Finally, when the kids were in middle school, she divorced. Her next involvements, however, were also bad.
I dated 2 other toxic people they were just toxic people, and I was bonded to. I would say I had a a trauma bond to those 2 as well. But then when I met Tim, I thought, this is it. The pattern's broken. This is perfect. I can't believe it. Finally, I've got a nice guy. And it turned out to be the absolute worst one of all.
Sarah met Tim just before Christmas. Sarah and 5 or 6 friends were at a restaurant celebrating the season. Tim made eye contact. He was a handsome man with bright blue eyes. He bought her a drink. Later, he walked Sarah to her car. They talked. Tim told her that he was going through a difficult divorce. Tim asked Sarah out to dinner, but she declined. A month later, she ran into Tim again at the same establishment. He again invited her to dinner, and this time Sarah accepted.
He was very debonair, good looking. He was just very soft spoken, very soft spoken. Seemed kind of shy and quiet. I learned later that's definitely not the case, but very reserved and very well dressed and groomed. And I just, drove this really fancy car, and I thought, wow, this person is great, very sweet, and he's going through what I've been through. A terrible marriage, and needed to escape. And then I believed everything he said. Somebody was trying to, he called them imposters. He said, if you look me up, I just want you to know I have several Facebook accounts, but they're not me. It's an imposter, and someone's been trying to take my identity because I'm so high up in the military. I believed it all.
Tim told Sarah that his marriage was unhappy, and he wanted to start his life over. They began to spend time together, and it was wonderful.
Oh, we went everywhere. We went to parks, and we actually went to my hometown and met some of my family members. We would take long drives. He would come to all of my daughter's games. We would go to lots of movies and out to dinner, and just, things like that. And he was just so wonderful. It was like the perfect guy. He was patient, kind. He got along well with this is at the very beginning with the girls. I finally decided to introduce him to them, and they did say that they felt he was a little strange, odd, And in the very beginning, I probably saw a couple of things that I was like, that's a little odd, or I would catch him in a little lie, but I couldn't put my finger on it because he would say he had to go to Germany or he had to hop on a plane and get out of here because of work. And I believed all that.
Why wouldn't she believe what Tim said? His military history was easily verified. His picture was all over the internet. Sometimes he was interviewed on TV news shows like CNN.
He was on television quite a bit, and he was Googleable, so what was not to believe about some of the personal things he was saying? I believed him. He seemed like a man of honor. He put the uniform on and protected our country. And I thought, I finally met a good person.
Seeing Tim on television gave Sarah confidence that she was making a good decision in dating him.
It validated everything that I thought he was great because I looked him up and I thought, well, yep, here he is talking about what he does with his military tactics and everything. And I just thought, this is all I need. He's telling me he is who he says he is. He's telling me the truth, but I didn't know underneath that uniform or his skin was lying a very dark, sinister being that was totally opposite of everything I thought to be true.
About 3 months into the relationship, Sarah started to see that dark side. Tim became controlling.
I had to tell him everywhere I was going. He wanted to know where I was all the time. He would go past my work, and I just thought, look at him protecting me. This is wonderful. It sounds laughable and people might laugh at this, but really, I think other women out there listening to this couldn't relate.
Tim told Sarah that he and his wife had not divorced for financial reasons, but she was living out of state. It seemed to be true. The woman certainly wasn't around when Sarah went to Tim's house.
I stayed there. I had surgery. He took care of me during my surgery. I stayed. There weren't any signs. She was gone. And I thought, my goodness, she just up and left this beautiful home and moved to another state. She was really never around or there. And I found out later that she was residing in another state because she was taking care of her mother.
If you're wondering if someone in your life is a narcissist, sociopath, or psychopath, and you need advice on escape and recovery, talk to Donna. Donna Anderson, author of LoveFraud.com and host of True Love Fraud Stories, offers personal consultations. Since she founded Love Fraud in 2005, Donna has collected more than 10,000 cases, so she's probably heard a story like yours before. You're certainly not alone. Donna is also a certified Reiki master. Reiki is a healing approach for stress reduction and relaxation. Donna combines this with her deep emotional release technique to help you let go of the pain of your experience. Book your session today at lovefraud.com/talk to Donna.
Tim had been telling Sarah that his estranged wife, Darla, was living out of town. Then, to Sarah's complete shock, she came face to face with her.
I was at a softball game with my daughter, and Darla approached the vehicle and said, "I am Tim's wife." And I was flabbergasted because it took my breath away. I didn't even know how to react to that. And he began to say, I told you she's crazy. I told you she's insane and that she's dangerous. And I thought, oh my goodness, she's going to hurt us all. And he was the dangerous one.
6 months into Sarah's relationship with Tim, he became violent.
He wanted me to come with him, go with him somewhere. And I said, I just want to stay home. And he started throwing water bottles at me, just out of the refrigerator. And I thought, what is happening here? And I had a skirt on that had snaps up the front, and he just took his finger and we were outside actually, and he just took his finger and he ripped my skirt open where I was standing there exposed, without a skirt on. And I went back in the house. He was throwing things at me. He started getting he got this very dark look in his eyes. His eyes almost turned black. It was like they changed color. And I was like, what have I done? And then he left, and I actually fell apart. And I began, crying and begging him to come back. I was sick. I was sick. And I will call it that, because I wasn't well mentally. And I even begged him to come back to me. I followed him in my car. I was like, please come back. So I looked like the crazy one. I looked like the one that was chasing him. And, people would ask me later, why did you keep going back? Why did you beg him to come back? And I know now that I was just trauma bonded. It was like a parent leaving a little 2 or 3-year-old in a home alone, abandoned home, and pulling out of the driveway, and you picture that child screaming, don't leave me, don't leave me. And that's how I felt. I felt like a child. Every time that he left, it got worse. And the times in between became longer. The first time he left, it was for 3 days, and then it was 7. And then the next time it would be 2 weeks. And then I wouldn't hear from him for, maybe a month. But he would always come back, and I felt such relief when he did.
Sarah realized that something was seriously wrong in her involvement with Tim. She needed to do something about it.
I found a good therapist, and I began reading, because I thought, how am I going to get out of this? What's happening? And that's when a friend said, I think he might be a sociopath or a narcissist. And I said, I don't even know what you're talking about. And then I started reading about it, and I checked every single box of how I was feeling, and it checked every single box about what he was doing to me. And I said, this is it. This is what's happening. And I learned about trauma bonding, and I learned about the cycle of abuse and what he was doing and how he was manipulating me. And once I learned about all of this, I got stronger each time. I think I began to get stronger, and the stronger I became, the worse the abuse got.
About halfway through their relationship, Tim started using a new tactic to exert control over Sarah.
If I would say I wasn't coming over, he'd say, I'm going to kill myself. I'm going to kill myself. And so one night, he said, I'm going to kill myself tonight. And I didn't know what to do. And he sent me a text that said, I'm in the hospital. I'm in the hospital at Walter Reed, and they are treating me right now. And I attempted to take my life, but they came and took the guns out of the house. And thanks to you, because you caused this, I'm I'm alive, but I almost took my own life. On that night, I don't believe that he was even in the area. I think he was with his wife, and he wanted me to think he was in the hospital so that I, stayed away, because he was living a double, triple, quadruple life. So he would threaten to kill himself quite often.
But Sarah didn't yet realize Tim's scam. On that night, she believed he had attempted suicide.
I thought he really was in the hospital and that he had tried to kill himself, and I was just devastated. I thought, oh my goodness, that it's hard for me to talk about it from this standpoint, but at the time, if I go back with you in my mind, I was crying. I was upset. I was texting him all night long. Are you still in the hospital? Which, looking at it, if you go to the hospital, if you attempt suicide, they take your phone. You don't have your phone with you. And he said, yes, I'm here. It's just, I'm okay now. It just was a quick breakdown, but when I get out of here, I'd like to see you. And I'm like, absolutely, I'm so sorry. And so he played on that. My father killed himself, and he knew that. And whatever happened in my life, like I said, there's an example of what he would do. My father killed himself, which was devastating, even though he was an abuser, he was my father. I still loved him. He took his own life, and he threatened to kill himself quite often.
New Year's Eve rolled around, and Tim and Sarah took a trip for the holiday. By this point, Sarah had learned to recognize the warning signs that Tim was going to explode, and when they got back to their hotel room, she saw them.
I wanted to go home, and I just wanted to get away from him because he was drinking a lot, and I could tell he was getting ready to switch like over to who he really is. And I said, I was so scared that I said, I'll do whatever you want to do. I'll do whatever you want to do, because I wanted to get out of that room, and I wasn't sure how I was going to get out. And so he just took a chair, almost like military style, turned it around, sat on it, crossed his legs with his hands clasped over his knee, and began to just, you want to say talk to me, but it wasn't like talking. It was almost like questioning me about why I wanted to leave and what I was going to do about it if I didn't get out, and how he had all the power and there wasn't anything I could do about it kind of scenario. And my friends were losers, and I was a loser, and I wasn't going anywhere, and you're going to stay right here. And I realized at the time the way to get out of it was to have sex with him and to pretend like I was okay with everything. I'm like, you're right. I'm wrong. I'm sorry. And I just started apologizing, profusely. And then I had sex with him, hoping that would get me out.
After the sex, Tim calmed down, but Sarah was still terrified.
He went to sleep. I stayed awake and just didn't go to sleep. I just stayed there very still, didn't move.
Sarah was shocked that the caring, soft-spoken man who doted on her in the beginning of the relationship was now threatening her for wanting to go home.
I just couldn't believe that he was another person. That he was an entirely different person than the one I'd met and the one that I experienced all of these wonderful things with. It was two opposite people.
In self-preservation, Sarah started pulling away from Tim. One night, she went with her friends to the restaurant where she and Tim originally met.
So I just went by myself and met my friends, and we were all sitting around, and Tim walked in and said, I need to talk to you. And I just said, no, I'm not going to. You need to leave and leave me alone. And a couple of people near me said, you heard what she said. You need to just leave. And he stormed out. He came back in 2 or 3 times trying to get me to leave with him, and I wouldn't do it. So my friend decided to walk me out, and we walked down the sidewalk. We actually ended up going to another place in that little town, but I left, and I took a right and he took a left, and A group of people were walking up the sidewalk away from this establishment and noticed a body in the ditch. And they called 911, and it was my friend, and he had been hit in the back of the head so severely that he needed 45 staples.
Sarah was the last person seen with her friend. The police contacted her.
I just thought to myself, he must have fallen. My friend must have. Tim would never take it this. He would never do this. He would never take it this far, ever. But after speaking to the police officers for several hours, they said, look, we're pretty convinced that he did this, but we don't have any cameras out there in that area, no cameras, and he has an alibi.
At least the cops thought he had an alibi.
I found out later that his wife lied for him and said that he was home, and he wasn't.
Darla admitted this directly to Sarah when they talked. Tim had warned her that if the police ever came around questioning his whereabouts, she should say that he was with her. So that's what she did.
It is an unsolved case, and it is an open attempted murder case to this day.
All Sarah knew at the time of the attack was that the police were suspicious. The brutal violence left her spooked.
It's just very traumatic, and it's even hard to talk about to this day. It makes me so sick on my stomach, because it could have been me. I took a right, he took a left. I chose a different path to get to my car because it was raining that night, and it was very, very dark. And I wonder sometimes, had I taken a left, that could have been me, and I wouldn't be here today.
After her friend was brutally attacked, Sarah got serious about investigating Tim.
After the police talked to me for a long time, I started just looking up Facebook, Twitter, things like, and I saw all these women making comments, and of course he always said that it wasn't him. And at this time, I'm still in a little bit of denial, okay? You've got to remember what the person you're talking to right now, I'm very clear, and I've healed well. The person that I was then, I was constantly in a state of panic, frantic, and confusion. And I stayed that way every day. It was confusion and chaos in my mind. And I started looking, and I read what the women were saying, like, how come you haven't called? And, where have you been? Things like that. And I thought, what? So I thought, this is an imposter. He said it was an imposter. And I believed it. And then I had a friend start looking with me, and she said, I don't think this is not an imposter. This is Tim. This is Tim.
Then came the fateful day when Tim asked Sarah to meet him at a hotel, and his wife Darla came pounding on the door.
I went to see him. He said he needed to talk to me. His wife was beating on the door. And I think I think he loved to let her know where he was going. I mean, I think he probably told her he was there. I'm not kidding. It's crazy because she is so, my dad could do that to my mom. He would tell her anything, and she would just, it didn't matter. I have a girlfriend. Okay, so, and she'd stay. I think he torments her. I think he torments, whatever, whoever he's with, he torments. But I think he was tormenting his wife. And I think he would almost set her up so she would be able to see these things and hurt her. And she showed up. She's beating on the door. She's frantic. She's not crying, but she's screaming. She leaves. I finally said, I'm going to get out of here. I've got to get out of here. And I got out, or he let, he said, okay. Well, no wonder, because the third victim was there. And then I drove back that evening, just curious, what was going on. I thought, oh, who knows, I was just, that's the state of mind that they leave you in. I was just insane. I went back over there, and I'm sitting in my car. You turn into a private investigator. You turn into all kinds of people. You turn into somebody insane, somebody you don't recognize anymore when you look in the mirror, and private detective and PI. You just turn into all these different people because you don't know what's going on. It's chaos. And here he is walking out with another woman, same day. So 3 women in the same day. Yes, absolutely.
What did Sarah do?
I fell apart. I jumped out of my car. I ran over to them. I approached them, and I said to her, "You are with a very, very dangerous person, and you need to run. And this is unbelievable." I said, "This is like Netflix." And I said, "His wife has been here today. I have been here today, and now you are here. You need to run." And I said, and then I looked at him, and I said to him, and looked him in the eyes, and he was very calm. He didn't even bat an eye. He didn't even bat an eye. And I said, you are unbelievable. You are the epitome of a deceiver. Who are you? And I said, and I was crying too. I was crying uncontrollably, and I looked crazy. She probably looked at me, and he probably said, "I told you she's crazy," just like his wife looked crazy to me. I mean, they will manifest this. I mean, you look like the insane one, even though I really wasn't. I mean, I look at the Betty Roderick story. I've watched that movie 100 times because I can see how that happens. They make you crazy. I was crying, and I went home. I curled myself up in a ball. I was sick. I just, because I was mourning the fact that I was mourning 3 things. I didn't know who he was. I was trauma bonded, and I didn't want to let him go. As after all this, everybody says to me all the time, "How could you not want to let that go after all he put you through?" It wasn't what people think. It was the trauma bond. It's the bonding that happens, and cutting that soul tie. And that's what was going on. And then the third thing, so I'm crying from the loss because I couldn't, the abandonment and the fear. I'm crying for myself because I'm a shell of a person at this point. And I'm also crying because there was all this like guilt of not only for his wife, but the guilt of, like, how could I let this, how could I be so, I felt stupid. Well, he called me stupid all the time anyway. "You're so stupid. You're so stupid." And I felt stupid. I thought, I really am. How could I let this happen? This is my fault. And I felt like I was at fault, but really I wasn't. This is not, women blame themselves, and they're embarrassed, and you feel so embarrassed that it went this far, that you would let this go on for this long. But I realized it's not embarrassing. I was a victim, now survivor. But at the time, sometimes we stay because we feel like, well, it's my fault. I kept going back. It's my fault. I kept allowing him to come back. But it's not. It's not your fault. And if you're out there and you think that this is your fault, and they do make you crazy, and they do get in your head, and that bond is very sick and strong. It's like something, outer body experience, really.
Sarah now knew the truth. Tim was a deceiver. He was a controller. He was evil. So, did she ever see him again?
I hate to tell you this, and I hate to tell our listeners out there this. I did. I saw him again a couple of months later. He contacted me and said that he was moving and that he had some explaining to do. This is the great part that you're going to love. So I agreed because at this point I wasn't well, and I did. I met him at this restaurant, and he said the girl that I saw him with at the hotel, we'll call her girl number 3, was a military friend who was going through a very hard time with her husband, and that it wasn't at all what I deemed it to be, that he had known her for several years, and that they were friends of his, and he was trying to help she and her husband get back together. Well, I found out later she didn't even have a husband. She was never in the military. uh she was just another victim that she was actually his massage therapist. And that's what I found out later. So that was a lie as well. And I wanted to believe it so badly. I wanted to believe that his wife was crazy, well, she probably is now because she's been in it so long. But I wanted to believe that he was getting divorced. I wanted to believe that that woman was a military friend. But it's simply, I wanted to believe that there were imposters on Facebook mimicking him, and that it really wasn't him with all of these women on his friend list or whatever. I wanted to believe it all. And I did believe it all in the beginning. In the beginning, I believed it all. But every single thing was a lie. Every story, everything was fabricated. To this day, I have no idea who he is. I really don't know who he is, other than just pure evil.
Now Sarah says that the person she dated for almost 2 years was not a man. He was a disguise.
There are so many different facets to this. When you have the money, he's very wealthy, very wealthy. So that was true. He was high-ranking officer and he has money. That's true. False is everything was false. He lied about his childhood. He lied about who was at the hotel. He lied about his wife. She wasn't going in it. I mean, she was still in it. She's very ill herself. So she's going to probably, I don't know. I don't know where they are. I don't know what's going on, but I'm saying everything was a lie except for maybe his military status. That was about it.
Even though she wanted to believe Tim, Sarah knew that she had to get away from him. How did she escape? She changed everything that she could.
I got another job, and I began to see this therapist and a psychiatrist who started to lead me out of the dark. And he decided to move away. And that's really what helped me get out, is that they decided to move. Thank goodness. He was already on to his next victim before I had even left the scene. In fact, we don't know how many victims are out there, but it wasn't just me that he was doing this to. He was a very busy person. So, a very busy person. So, think about that. I mean, it wasn't just me that he was grooming and doing this to. So he just moved on to another place and other victims.
Even though their relationship was over, Tim still kept tabs on Sarah. She discovered this later when she got together with an old friend.
I met a friend of mine, and we've been friends for years, and he wrote a text to me that said, "I had a great time last night. We just, went out for dinner and drinks, whatever." And I said, "I did too." And he sent an email to me because he was blocked. I had him blocked, that said, "I hope you had a wonderful time last night. Um, Dinner and drinks sound great." Okay, it was the same email was constructed by what my friend had said, and I thought, and my phone was really acting up, and it would just glitch all the time, or the battery would run out quickly. And I took it to Verizon. I said, "Something, I'm telling you, he's put something on my phone. I think so." And everywhere I went, he seemed to know where I was. Well, we did a three-way call, Verizon, Apple, and myself, and they remote controlled in, and that's how they found it's called Chinese keyboard. You go to settings, and you can go to settings on your phone, anybody out there, and see what applications are running, and it was embedded very deep in there, and he managed to they said, "Was he near your phone?" I said, "Oh, of course." I would get up and go to the bathroom or, whatever. He had plenty of time to install it. It only takes seconds. And they can read everything. They can read your messages. They can get to your bank accounts. They know what apps you have. They have control of your phone. They can see everything on your phone. And they s- uh, they removed the keyboard, and they said, if you really want to be safe, you need to get a brand new phone, a new number, delete everything. And I did. I managed to save my photos, but that was about it. And so I had to start all over, and that was a nightmare because, my banking, my routing, it took months to straighten this out. What, he infiltrated my whole world uh via electronics, because that's how they do it now. It's a whole new world out there. They don't have to drive by your home anymore. They can find out exactly where you are just by using your phone or your device or any mechanism. I got a new Apple ID. That's really important. If they have your Apple ID, they can do anything with that and manipulate it. So I got a new device, new Apple ID, kind of got a new identity via electronic means.
Sarah moved on in her life, although she wasn't dating. And then, 5 years after she ended the relationship with Tim, he reached out to her.
He sent me a message and via social media, and I could not believe it. It took my breath away. 5 years later, 5 years of quiet. And that's when I started watching your things again, because I thought, oh, let's get armored up, let's get ready, because we don't know what's going to happen. And I just sent a very clear message. Do not contact me. That's it. And I haven't heard anything since.
Now, Sarah wants nothing to do with Tim. But there was a time when, even though he was abusing her, she pined for him.
I had a hard time escaping. I also had a hard time staying away. I kept returning, and when he would come back to me, it was almost like a relief. Like it was like an addiction. And I couldn't say, these police officers say, "Well, I can see where you kept texting him." And I'm like, "But you don't understand. It's so hard to explain. It's not like you want it, but it's like an addiction. We all know heroin is bad for us, but why do heroin addicts, keep using?" Uh, he had my mind. He had control of my mind, and I became addicted, and fighting that addiction was like fighting a drug for me. And even though I knew it was bad, I kept going back, and I kept letting him return, as sick as it sounds. And it does sound sick, but when you're in it, that's how it feels. Like, it's bad, but you feel like you can't live without them. It's really hard to explain, and you wait for them to contact you. You actually want them to contact you. You want them to contact you. And even though, and I believe, look how many lives are probably lost from that, because you feel like when they leave you, the whole world is ending, even though it's actually a blessing and a gift. At that time, you don't see it like that because the trauma bond is so real and so strong. I wanted to check myself into a hospital so they would take my phone. They would take everything to see if I could get over this, because I couldn't seem to get over him and get away from it. And now, and it's even hard to talk about how sick I was and how unhealthy I became. I lost so much weight. I looked like I was unhealthy, a different person. I was drinking. I was self-medicating. I was doing whatever I could to make myself feel better at the time, because I thought I'm never gonna make it. I can't live with this person. I can't live without this person. And that feeling of living without him was actually stronger than the feeling of being abused while I was with him. The fear of abandonment overtook me so powerfully. I was so afraid of it. But I was abandoned as a child. So those wounds, if we don't go in there and take care of them, you don't realize, like, those unhealed wounds of abandonment and issues from when we were little are so powerful that we carry them with us. And somebody like this dark entity and dark creature will come in and just literally disguise themselves like they are perfect and wonderful, and they are the devil. It's all a disguise. And then I find out, there's just not me. There's another person out there, and then another one, and uh, I would like to see him stopped. I think somebody might hear this and say, or even somebody might hear this and resonate with it and say, I can do this. I can fight. I can pull up my bootstraps and get out of this. I can do it. And you can with a strong network and just people like you who've, and I'm not just saying this, I'm not getting anything out of this. It really helped me a lot. And you wrote me back, and I'm like, this, there's hope. There's hope out there for survivors.
I'm Donna Anderson, and this is True Love Fraud Stories. Tim wasn't a military wannabe. He truly was high up in the armed forces. But this man had no honor. He was married and a serial seducer. If this story sounds familiar to you and you think you may have encountered this person, Love Fraud wants to hear from you. Tell us what happened. Go to podcasts.lovefraud.com and click the Share Your Story link on the homepage. In this episode, Sarah described how she became trauma bonded to Tim. What does this mean? In the next episode of True Love Fraud Stories, I'll speak with a therapist who will explain trauma bonding and how to deal with it. Be sure to listen. So, have you been able to help other survivors?
One teacher friend of mine, who's I was actually, I'm going to ask her to email you, because I think you can really help her too, because you helped me so much. Uh, she has suffered greatly. And she said, I don't know what I would do. I don't know what to do, because I introduced her to narcissism, just like my friend introduced me to it. Because if you don't know about it, you don't know what you're dealing with. You don't have any tools in your toolbox. You have to have tools in your toolbox. How was I supposed to know? I really didn't know what I was dealing with. And she was married to him. She had two restraining orders, but she would be the one to break the restraining order. And she would say to me, I can't seem to I can't seem to stop myself, or I can't seem to, for here I am, I have a restraining order to keep him away, but then a couple of months go by and I don't hear from him and I reach out to him. It doesn't make sense. And I said, it's not you, it's the bond, it's the trauma bond. And that's what's happening. It doesn't make sense. Why would you want to be with someone who hurts you and cheats on you and lies to you and steals from you and puts cameras in your homes and infiltrates your life? Well, because there's something there that ties you to, it's like a soul tie. It's darkness. It's a dark entity. And it's it's a darkness and it pulls you in like a sphere. I can't explain it really. And she was able to, I think when you start telling people, stop feeling guilty, the guilt and the shame will keep you from growing. And there is no shame in women who, even my own story, who are victims. There's no shame. We're victims. And they know they know exactly who to go for. Even if you grew up in a loving, perfect home, there's something that they see that they know they can, and smart women, very smart women are taken by these men. There's something that they see that they can zoom in and say, okay, this is it. This woman, they sense it, they can feel it, and a weakness or a something that's missing inside of you, and they're able to pull you in. And it happens very subtly, but also very quickly. I would describe it like a current, a rip current, like when you're out in the ocean, you're swimming, and before you know it, you're 3 miles away, and it's like a rip tide. And you wake up and you're like in the middle of the ocean, and it's like, what happened? So I said, stop feeling the shame from contacting him. A lot of women won't tell the truth. They won't say, you know what? I did sit in front of his house. I did drive by. I did look for him. I did beg him to talk to me, because that does happen. You don't want it, but you do. It's what happens. It's a brain scramble. You feel like a scrambled egg. Why am I wanting this person to contact me when I'm afraid he's going to kill me? And it's why therapy and education are so important, and just really realizing you can do it. You can do it. And it's normal to feel this way. We see, I've heard so many times people have said to me, it's just not normal. It's just not normal. Why would she stay? Why would she stay? Why would she keep going back? I mean, she met his wife, for crying out loud, and another woman, and she still saw him for dinner after that and listened to his lies, because they're in because of that insatiable appetite to not only figure it out, but to realize, I'm not this person. I'm not a dumb girl. I'm a very intelligent woman. How could this have happened? But then I started uncovering the layers of my childhood and what my mom went through and what I went through, and how I had so many unmet needs. And he can they it's like a shark in the water, that they can smell blood from however a mile away. He could smell that, and he could sense that in me. And they're just very skilled at what they do. And let me tell you something, this man that I dealt with, Tim, has had a lot of practice over the years, a lot of practice. He has it down to a science.
True Love Fraud Stories is produced by lovefraud.com. For more information about this story, other great stories, or if you'd like to share your story, visit podcasts.lovefraud.com. Engineering is by Terry Kelly. To learn how to recognize and recover from everyday sociopaths, visit lovefraud.com. You'll find articles, books, and webinars. You can also make an appointment with me, Donna Anderson, for advice on dealing with and recovering from a disordered individual. Book your session today at lovefraud.com/talk to Donna. Also, I invite you to my Love Fraud Live YouTube show. I talk about how to spot, escape, and recover from sociopaths, and then I answer your questions. It streams live every Tuesday at 8 p.m. Eastern Time. I look forward to seeing you there.